Hello YouTube fam. Thank you for visiting my channel today. This is where I like to discuss solved and unsolved true crime cases, crime facts and statistics, and missing persons cases that I feel have not gotten enough attention from mainstream media. If you're interested in these topics, I hope you will choose to subscribe to my channel. Also, if you click the little bell, YouTube will notify you whenever I upload new content. Quick disclaimer. The topics I talk about are for grown folks. Although sometimes I am not very mature, my topics are. Today I will be talking about the profession of prostitution and the people who are involved therein. So that I don't have to be super repetitive, let me make some assertions now. All of the data and statistics stated in this video are merely averages and not at all specific to any one individual. Experiences vary from circumstance to circumstance, from one person to another, from location to location. All of these statistics are just a result of data that I collected from many resources and are in no way indicative of everyone's situation. Working in the sex industry is a job. It's a means to an end. Some people may look down upon what they do for a living, referring to it as taking the easy way out. And to those people, let me just say this. Unless you have walked in their shoes, you have no idea how difficult their jobs actually are, nor can you fathom the events that led so many down this path. Sexual harassment and assaults oftentimes go unreported for fear that the victims will be blamed or arrested. Law enforcement generally does not take their cases very seriously. There are no HR departments, retirement plans, sick days, or medical benefits. The hours are long, the work is grueling, and they are in constant danger. Danger of being arrested, getting robbed, even worse. The purpose of this video is not to judge or look down on anyone in this line of work. On the contrary, I would like to educate people in hopes that less people will be apathetic, dismissive, and judgmental. I have read way too many cases where law enforcement officers have turned a blind eye to crimes against sex workers. Too many cases where they do not feel that an investigation is even worth their time, as if the victims wanted or deserved to be robbed, beaten, raped, or murdered. It makes me sick to my stomach, and frankly, it just pisses me right the fuck off. Mainstream media generally avoids reporting on the cases of crimes against them. I mean, other than the Green River Killer and the West Mesa murders, how many cases really come to your mind? How many of you can name just one single victim of those serial murders without Google? I am going to guess that most of you cannot, and that is precisely my point. They are not subhuman. They are not just statistics and numbers. Things have got to change for human kindness, morality, and justice to become a reality instead of mere words. Okay, speech over. Let's just jump into these facts, okay? Did you know that the average age that both males and females begin working in the sex industry is 14 years old? Did you know that a male quits his line of work on average at about 25 years old, but females tend to do this work longer because many work for pimps. Many males don't use the services of pimps, and this makes it easier to get out. A pimp, for those who do not know, is like a boss. Obviously, not all are the same, but many will take the money a woman makes and earns and then decide how it will be spent, keeping the majority for himself. Some of these guys will have quotas, as in you need to bring home X amount of money. And if she doesn't bring home enough money, it's assumed that she is not working hard enough or is lying about how much she has made. If she breaks his rules, chances are she's going to have consequences. Some can be really harsh, like beatings, starvation. You may be asking yourself why anyone would even want a pimp. Well, they may give her a place to live, food, drugs, protection from Johns, even a location to procure clients. A John, by the way, is another term for a client or a customer. Most pimps have multiple employees. A lot of the times they all live together, so it can become a sense of family that many of these women have never had before. Did you know that in the United States, approximately 80,000 people are arrested for prostitution each year? Did you know that of those 80,000 arrests, 70% are the female prostitutes? Only 20% are pimps and 10% Johns. Tell me again how gender inequality is a thing of the past. Almost 3/4 have been arrested for prostitution, and of those, almost half were arrested prior to the age of 18. Did you know that these arrests cost taxpayers over $200 million per year in the United States alone? Did you know that in the United States, the only state that prostitution is legal is in Nevada, and even there are stipulations. Only 10 of Nevada's 16 counties allow prostitution. It's only legal in licensed brothels that employ licensed workers. By the way, Las Vegas is not one of the counties, or is not in one of the counties that's legal. The cost to operate a legal brothel ranges between $100,000 and $200,000 for the licensure per year. And guess who pays that? Yep, you got it. The sex workers are going to be charged for that. They have to also pay for their own licenses. They're not allowed to work without one. They have to have STD checks every week. They have to not talk anybody else into being a prostitute, and they have to only do prostitution in the brothel. Brothels are not allowed to be located in any county that has more than 700,000 residents. Did you know that in 2009, Las Vegas was identified by the FBI as one of 14 cities in the United States with the highest rates of child prostitution? Las Vegas Police Department claimed that each year they take off the streets roughly 400 child prostitutes, and that trafficking is very rampant. But I'm going to go ahead and go into child trafficking and human sex trafficking in another episode because unfortunately and very sadly, there's just way too much information on that. Did you know that in Canada, 14% of all prostitute murders are not solved? Did you know that in Canada, purchasing sexual services was not illegal until the year 2014? Did you know that in Sweden, the Protection of Communities and Exploited Persons Act, or also known as the PCEPA, enacted something called a Nordic model in 1999. The Nordic model treats prostitution as exploitive of mostly females and aims to reduce its incidence by focusing on penalizing the purchasers of sexual services as well as those who benefit financially from the work of others. In other words, they started going after the pimps and the johns more than the prostitutes themselves. And the United States could surely learn something from those examples. Did you know that sex workers only make up 0.3% of the entire population in the United States? 0.3%. Yet, between 1970 and 2009, they made up 22% of confirmed serial murder victims. Yes, that number is huge and staggering, but it gets worse. During the 10 years between 2009 and 2019, the percentage of serial murder victims that were prostitutes rose from the 22% to 43%. Eric Hickey, author of Serial Murderers and Their Victims, stated, "Being a prostitute increases your chance of being murdered by 200 times." And he also said that they are easily disposed of and not going to be missed. The Green River Killer, Gary Ridgway, said at his sentencing hearing, "I picked prostitutes as my victims because I hate most prostitutes. I also picked prostitutes because they were easy to pick up without being noticed. I knew that they would not be reported missing. I picked prostitutes because I thought I could kill as many of them as I wanted to without getting caught." He's almost completely right. Did you know that for arrests across the United States of prostitutes under the age of 18, 55% were black children? 55%. Also in the United States, of all women working in this field, 57% are white, 40% are black. To put that into perspective, at the time that these statistics were reported, only 12% of the entire population in the United States were black, and that included men as well. Did you know? In the year 2002, it was estimated that there were about 16,000 females working as prostitutes in Chicago alone. Did you know that in 2002, the age at which these females first exchanged sexual acts for money was between the ages of 4 and 50? About 1/3 began before the age of 15. 62% began before the age of 18, and the percentages have gone up dramatically since the period between of the girls that worked between 12 and 15 years old. 72% had run away from home. Most had already used drugs and alcohol before running away. Only 25% had either graduated from high school or had their GED. Over one half grew up in a home that engaged in illegal sexual activity. 87% were introduced to the prostitution lifestyle by somebody in their own home. 1/4 grew up without a mother in the home, and a whopping 59% grew up without a father in the home. Over 80% were victims of abuse prior to becoming a prostitute, whether it be emotional, physical, sexual, combination of the three. Did you know that over half of the women prostitutes reported that they were homeless? They would stay with family, friends, shelters, pimps. Did you know that 95% of those women admit to using drugs and alcohol? And 90% of those women say that their use has increased since beginning in this line of work. Did you know that over 95% of these women have been sexually assaulted or raped and beaten in their lifetimes, and most more than 10 times? And the people who they identified as the perpetrators who assaulted them were in order of frequency. Number 1, their customers. Number 2, their pimps. And number 3, yes, police officers. That's right. The ones that are supposed to be helping these women by investigating the crimes against them, though many times they don't. And they are the ones that are all too often the motherfuckers that need to be investigated. And I wonder, is that the reason why so many of these crimes are being ignored and why so many prostitute murders go unsolved? Now, let me be clear. I do not think that all police officers are corrupt, lazy, and inept. However, the bad apples make it very difficult for me to have faith in the police as a whole. Do I believe in defunding the police? The short answer is no. However, I absolutely believe that they need to do a countrywide overhaul, weed out all the bad ones, and retrain the good ones. But obviously, that's just my own opinion and a topic for another story. Another video. Okay, so now I'm going to tell a little personal story. Some of you know my story, some of you know a little bit, and some of you have only just seen me today. I have a very colorful past. I have worn many hats, so to speak. And one of these days I may share my whole story with you, but for right now I just want to take you back to when I was between the ages of 19 and 22 years old. By the way, I am almost 48 now. At 19, I lived in a town called Tukwila, which was a subdivision of Seattle in Washington State. I moved there when I was 17 from Los Angeles. When I got there, after a little while, I married a very abusive older man. He was 27 at the time. I was 19. And then we moved to a one-bedroom house in another subdivision called South Park. Not the safest of areas, as evident by the bars on the windows and the bulletproof glass, but it didn't bother me because I had lived in worse places. So my husband became a heroin addict, and then shortly after, so did I. He spent more time in jail cells than at home, and I would sell crack cocaine and shoplift to pay the bills and supply my own habit. In no time, I started smoking my own supply, and it didn't take long at all before I couldn't afford to sell the stuff anymore. So I went ahead and found me a dealer down the street, and he always had a bunch of women at his house. And remember, I was 19 years old. I had no idea what they did for a living or that he was their pimp. But I did start to notice that my new friends had bruises and busted lips, and they would try to make excuses, try to hide the marks with makeup. And I was no stranger to making those same excuses. My closest friend that I met there was another 19-year-old who, for the purposes of this video, I'm going to call Missy. She was honest, kind, fun to be around. I could not understand why anybody would want to beat on her. One day she confided in me that my dealer was her pimp. She did want out, but she was really scared of him. And since I knew my husband would be incarcerated for at least the next year, I went ahead and invited her to stay with me. It took her 3 weeks to get up the courage to leave that house, but she finally moved into mine. She worked for that man for 4 years, and when she moved in, the only thing she owned were the clothes on her back. Unbelievable. I offered to try to take care of her until she could find other work, but she refused. I was just scared that he was going to catch her out on the street, but she didn't know any other way to make money. She had been a prostitute since she was 9 years old. And now I had a target on my back because my ex-dealer wanted his girl back, and she was in real danger every single time that she left the house, which is not helpful if you are a prostitute that works on the streets. Fast forward about 8 months. Missy and I had plans to celebrate her birthday when she got off work the next morning. I was going to take her to go shopping at a mall because she had never actually been to one, and I couldn't believe it. We were both super excited. She left for work that night, and I never seen her alive again or in person again. I tried to report her missing the next day. I was literally told that she would turn back up. She was probably out just with a pimp or a John that had money or dope, and when the well ran dry, she would come running home. I must have called them 24 times throughout the next month, and every time I was given the runaround. Eventually, I was warned to stop wasting their time as they had real cases to solve. And later that night, an officer showed up to my door. He did not give two shits about my missing friend, her disappearance, or the information that I had about her pimp or what I thought could have happened. Instead, first he lectured me about getting dragged down by, quote, those types of criminals. He said they were walking sacks of diseases, and in the very next breath, he started propositioning me. He turned out to be a bigger piece of shit than he thought my friends were. Around the same time my friend went missing, a lady down the road from the upper middle class area, that was, I guess, a few miles away, she had also gone missing. And I found out that my friend's remains were found from seeing her mugshot on the news. I was walking past the TV and spotted it. And it was the only photo that they could find, I guess. But if they'd had asked me, I could have given them a better one, but that would have taken effort on their part. The only reason that Missy's murder made the news was because they had hoped that when they found her remains, that they were the remains of the other lady that had come up missing. This news report was to inform the public that it was not, unfortunately, the lady they thought it was, and instead it was a prostitute. How disappointing. That 30-second news blip absolutely broke my heart. But more so, it instilled a fire that has been burning in my heart and my soul for the last 27 years. And it is one of the reasons that I make these videos. Let me just close now by saying that we are all products of our environments and of our past. We don't get to choose who we are born into, nor how we are raised. Little kids don't dream about being a prostitute when they grow up. There is not a one of us that have made no mistakes in our life or have taken wrong turns somewhere. And therefore, I don't feel we can judge others who have done things in their lives that we don't approve of. I hope this video helps you to have a little bit more understanding, empathy, compassion for people that previously you might not have. But if it doesn't, then maybe instead of judging them, it's time to start looking within yourself. Before you click out, please click like and or subscribe and share and leave a comment down below. You have no idea how much it will help my channel to grow and allow me to reach more viewers. To those who have already and to those who will now, I thank you so very much from the bottom of my heart. I also want to thank all who have joined me here today. Until next time, y'all stay safe out there.